What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle alongside Eagle Sports editor Robert Cessna. We're here at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville as Texas A&M just lost to the Tennessee Volunteers 20-13. Cease, there's a lot to break down in this game, a lot of weird things, a lot of bad things. What initially sticks out into your mind of kind of why this went, the wheels fell off the wagon for the Aggies in this game?
A couple things. You got to be able to score points. I thought the defense did a great job, and the special teams gave up 7 points. Tennessee only scored 13, so A&M can't score. Defense, despite missing key people. But to answer your question, they got to score more points, I think.
I think that falls a lot on the offensive line. Max Johnson was on his tail for a lot of the game, took some big hits, and they allowed 11 quarterback hurries in the game, including 2 sacks. I don't know if I see at this point in the season this is an offensive line, an issue that can be fixed moving forward. What's your thoughts on the offensive line, how they play, and where they go forward from this?
Yeah, that's what I agree with you, Travis, because the problem is Tennessee just did what Alabama did. And everybody, including myself, well, Alabama's really good. I don't think Tennessee's defensive line is as good as Alabama's. But once again, if you've got weaknesses and Tennessee took advantage of those weaknesses, and then A&M on the flip side, their offense couldn't take advantage. A&M's offense because it's a catch-22 because they're going to keep coming after Johnson, and who are they going to put in there? And even South Carolina and Mississippi State's going to do the same thing.
I focused in on my game story a lot on that little sequence there in the third quarter. The A&M's defense goes out, gets a stop, forces a punt that Tennessee is able to stop on the A&M 1-yard line. They have to run 3 plays out of the end zone, punt it back, and that's returned for a kickoff or a punt return that ends up being the game-winning points in the game. A&M has had 2 key instances where they've been backed into their own end zone this season. One, Connor Wegman was hurt on a play during the Auburn game, and then last week Max Johnson had to take an intentional grounding penalty that resulted in a safety in the end zone. Do you feel like Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino called it a little conservatively with how they were trying to get out of the end zone at that point, knowing that Nick Constantino hadn't been punting the ball very well today? Well,
obviously, in retrospect, that's the case. And they didn't want to give a turnover because they figured Tennessee was going to be very tough, if you don't give them a short field, they might not score. So I don't really have any problem with them in a way having Constantino punt. But then I talked to him that you got to do your best punt. The Gunners, you got to get that guy down. And he ran through 3 people. They should have tackled him at the 35. So that's really not on the offensive line. But once again, when things are going wrong, A&M's got a lot of things going wrong right now. And like you said, you centered in on that. You can center in the offensive line. You can talk about play calling when things go bad, and right now, hey, it's not pretty because if they'd have played great, let's say they lose 42-41, it was just a great game. Oh man, A&M players leave. Oh, this was nothing to feel good about. I think the defense needs to feel good, but man, there's just a lot of bad things. I think.
Jimbo Fisher taking a lot of heat from the onlines, the Twitter sphere and whatnot for what people are saying is some conservative play calling. Do you feel like that's been the case the last 2 games? And you can kind of point fingers towards into the first half, ends up not calling a timeout, kneeling the ball, going into the halftime with, I believe it was a 3-point lead. What do you make of kind of that play calling over the last, or some of the decision making over the last 2 games?
Once again, it all gets back, you got to win the ball game. They don't win the ball game. So you can't fault the guy for going in to halftime, both times the lead, but you can fault them for not finishing. They're not finishing. So other teams are making better adjustments than you are. That's what I read out of that. And whether it has nothing to do with being conservative or whatever, Tennessee, we're up here. Their people are glad. People who know that's not a good Tennessee team. And they lose today, they might be 7-5 or 6-6, but no, A&M lost. Tennessee's feeling real good, even though they failed real bad. So yeah, it all starts at the head coach. Jimbo gets paid $9-10 million, and people are frustrated because this is 2 weeks in a row. You can say, well, Alabama's a little bit better, but Alabama struggled today to beat Arkansas. It's every week And all A&M knows they're 4-3 after 7 weeks, and they've beat a couple bad teams that don't count.
Yeah, one of the weirder points, kind of going back to the offensive line a little bit, is the fact that Bryce Foster struggled just kind of snapping a ball. It was 6 plays that were not great, clean snaps to him in the game. Would you have... I know we're armchair quarterbacking here, but it was a little curious that you maybe don't give Martin Naboo a shot in there, switch it, bring in a different, or do you feel like there's just that much confusion on the offensive line that they don't want to mess with any continuity that they might have?
Well, it's an interesting question because it did happen, and we're around football enough is with everybody blitzing. Everybody's bringing one free blitzer when they can to Johnson. He takes his eyes off the ball for 1 second to see where that ball's at. That's an advantage to defense. And I think you need to see it. Now, maybe is the backup guy that bad because they put Cronover in on one series and they olayed him and the guy got a sack and they took him out because they can't have that happen. As you mentioned, all the pressures, all the sacks. And right now, yeah, it's easy to dump on, but they got to do something. I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, because they're going home. They got 2 weeks to get ready for a South Carolina team that they better win because, we don't want to be covering a team that's 4-4, and fans don't want to be watching a team 4-4 because they've lost a couple ugly games. It wasn't like they lost a couple great games. They played good at parts, particularly the defense. But, if anybody's out there in the Aggie hollering the sky is falling, well, it feels like the sky is falling. And so what do? Hope for sunshine and hope you can change things.
Yeah, we'll close it out with this. It's a bye week next week, the off week for A&M. They have some time to try to repair some things. What's the checklist for A&M and their coaching staff of the things that they need to repair going into that South Carolina game? And how much of it do you think is stuff that is mid-season fixable?
Well, I think you got to start with the offensive line and play calling. What do you call? Because that's why they're paying Bobby Petrino a lot. And he knew what he was walking into. The defense is still playing well. I mean, when your defense, the only thing the defense doesn't do is do turnovers that lead to points. Now, you can't coach that, okay? But this season is still very attainable, but not when you're scoring 6 points in the last 2 halves of the last 2 games. So you got to work on that. And how do you score in the second? I'm not paid $9 or $10 million a year. All I know is A&M's lost the last 2 games, and they were very winnable games.
And I'll even say that for the most part, and I know that Joe Milton isn't one of the better passing quarterbacks in the SEC, but the defensive secondary seemed better than they had in what was that last Alabama game. The defensive front seemed better. Everyone knew Tennessee was going to get some yards on the ground, but the defense looked more solid, which I think for A&M fans might make this loss even a little bit more hard to take because it was probably overall better defensive effort than they had against Alabama.
Oh, yeah, I think the defense did a lot better job, but I think some of that was to do with Tennessee, but also don't remember is now when teams get a lead against A&M or close, they're going to call their game different because they're going to say A&M can't score. Or you blitz, it's going to be hard for them to score 25, 30 points. We live in an era where you think you got to score 30 points. An interesting stat was that's the first time Heupel in 6 years as head coach has won a game when he scored less than 30. It's the way college football's played. And he didn't win just by going away. I mean, he won. It wasn't even close to 30 and he won. And I know all Aggie fans are frustrated as well as they should, and I don't know what to say because the offensive line, a lot of times you look up and you go like, they just can't run the ball. And I get it, but Alabama couldn't run the ball last week and they won. You got to find a way to win, and Jimbo's been around a long time, so is Bobby Petrino. They'll look for 2 weeks. Maybe they will change some things. Who knows?
We have a long drive back to get to where we're going to get back to College Station so we can ask some more of these questions moving into the bye week. So we'll leave it at that. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our write-ups, articles, and videos from today. So for Robert Cessna, I'm Travis Brown, and we'll talk to you again next week.